recently did a video on my very first guitar that I got back in the 1980s. And I thought I'd do a video here on the first new guitar that I didn't get until 2005. This one is an HP Signature Series by Peavey. 22 frets, 2 humbuckers, volume tone switch. And it's very much like a Les Paul. You have your set neck, arch top, angled neck, same hardware. But the thing feels like a Wolfgang, and that's what I've always loved about it. When Peavey was losing the Eddie Van Halen endorsement, they needed to think of something for the future, and this is what they went all in on. And it wasn't a very big commercial success, but it's a decent guitar, and I don't think that people know about how awesome this guitar is. So shortly after they started making these Signature Series is when they went into making clown guitars. You know what I'm talking about when I say Peavey clown guitars, right? Yep, there's one. And there's one. So I think their last ditch at quality was this piece right here, and I'm so happy to have it. So I'm going to set you up. We're going to go through it. I want to tell you some history of the Peavey guitars and the Signature Series itself. So let's do it. Alright, let's do a sound test. Grossly out of tune. Pots are a little scratchy. Probably deox them while I'm here. Yeah, so it works. So I bought this at Daddy's Junkie Music, and if you ever shopped there, they were a great store. Stupid name because their music wasn't really junky, but you know. But that's what we had here. You know, they didn't really have Guitar Center. It was kind of a really long ride to go to a Guitar Center. But we had Daddy's Junkie Music. Anybody remember that? What'd you get at Daddy's? Let me know in the comments. One, two, three frets isn't bad. I'm going to tape it up though. So Peavey started making amps and PAs in the 60s. And by the 70s they had a pretty good reputation for live sound. I bet your school auditorium probably had Peavey stuff. Your church probably had Peavey stuff, so you knew the name, you knew it was there. So Peavey started making guitars in the late 70s, mostly due to the fact that partly Peavey didn't like to be told no. Gibson and Fender both were kind of strong-arming small music shops into, you know, not carrying as much Peavey. You know, they might threaten to remove their products if, you know, they put Peavey front and center. They wanted Peavey to be a third-tier option. They wanted people to walk in the music shop, see Gibson, see Fender products, and you know, that's where they wanted them shopping. So So yeah, I don't think you're allowed by law to tell a Southern guy that his product shouldn't be top tier in a music shop. I don't think it's going to end well for you. He took that as a complete slight and decided he was going to get in the guitar making business. He took a tour of the Fender factory and realized there was a lot of stuff that they could be doing better, and he was going to innovate that. So he decided he was going to make electric guitars, put together a team. Chip Todd was one of the guys. Credited with the T60, making it what it was. Had a really unique circuitry that I don't think a lot of people understood. There was a lot of modes you could do with the T60. It wasn't just going to be a country guitar. It wasn't just going to be a hard rock guitar. It could be anything you wanted with it. There was a lot of switches on it, and I don't think people understood what most of them did. The volume, for instance, if you got up to about 7, it was a humbucker. Past 7, it turned into a single coil. That kind of screwed people up. You know, a lot of people just want to crank it to 10 and go. But then you're playing with 2 single coils. There was also a phase switch, which you can put them out of phase, and if you had that phase switch with the humbuckers, it was a really thick tone too. So I don't think a lot of people understood the practicality or how to use a lot of the switches there. This one's really high. Peavey was also the first company to use CNC routers to cut their bodies and necks. This way, you can put a neck with any neck with any body, and it would work, because they were all milled to the exact specifications. So you can thank Peavey for doing that and increasing guitar production. And I don't think there was a lot of companies using coil tapping too back then to split coils, you know. So Peavey continued to be an innovator in guitar production, design. They weren't afraid to try new things. All through the 80s. They never really got a top tier guy, I don't think, until they got Eddie to endorse their stuff. And some of the best instruments and amps that came out in that era. I'm sure everybody started on a Peavey. I bet you started on a Rage. Or if you were fortunate enough to get something bigger, maybe a Bandit. What was your first Peavey product? Let me know. Or do you hate Peavey? Why do you hate Peavey? Let me know why you hate Peavey. One of the things I've always loved about Peavey guitar innovation is their shapes. They had some really cool shapes in the 80s. You know, they didn't just make a Strat copy and put their own stuff on it, their spin on it. They kind of really tried to step outside the box with design. You just look at the T models. I mean, yeah, they're sort of Strat shaped, but other companies at the time were just taking the Strat shape and doing what they do with it. Whereas Peavey was trying to step outside the box. Look at stuff like the Mystic or the Mantis. I think those still would look good today. And, you know, the third counterpart of that was the Razor, which is kind of stupid looking, but, you know, they really did some innovative stuff with bodies and not just trying to take someone else's body shape. I think where Peavey's really shined in the 80s in the 90s, even a little bit of the early 2000s. I mean, besides from the Eddie Van Halen stuff, that was always good. But their basses always seem next level to me, you know what I mean? There's the simple design of a P bass or a J bass, and then there's a Peavey bass. And it's no wonder why, you know, some of the best bassists in the world use a Peavey. They just don't want to admit it. So I got my first Peavey product in 1991. It was my brand new Peavey Bandit amp, the teal stripe one. Absolutely loved that amp. Loved the distortion sound out of it. It got old. I still have it. I need to recap it. I might do it on this channel, but working myself up to it. So that was my first introduction into Peavey. Worked great for years until I really needed it to be reliable, and it wasn't. And I had to move on up to something better. But my first foray into Peavey guitars, I really didn't know much about them. I knew a Patriot. I knew somebody who had a Patriot growing up, and I really liked the feel of it, but never really put much thought into it. I was at a bookstore and I saw a book on something like unique guitars or something. And I always wanted to have a unique guitar. Everybody's got a Strat, everybody's got a Les Paul, but just to have something a little bit different, you know. So I was flipping through the pages and I saw a picture of a T60 and it just jumped out at me. I'm like, oh, that's a Peavey, I guess. So I was on the hunt for years for a Peavey T60. And best I could do was a T15, which is like the student model. They called them the Mississippi Mustang. So they were like a smaller scale. Absolutely love that guitar. This was my second Peavey guitar, and maybe about 10 years ago I finally got a T60, and they were right before they started going up in price. What happened was the Doom bands discovered that the phase switch could give you a really thick, doomy sound. So they were taking the necks off, putting aluminum necks on them, and, you know, turning it into doom rigs. So the prices shot up. If you look up T60 now, they're probably around $1,000, somewhere in there for a good one. Way too much. Perfect. I got this book a couple years ago. It's Peavey Guitars, The American History by Willie G. Mosley. And it's just great for... If you're into Peavey guitars, this is the book to get. It tells you everything about them, schematics, history, tons of pictures. So, yeah, that's a winner. So I got my story of the Signature Series out of this book, and I'll tell you what I learned. A mid-2004 price list saw the HP Signature Series and the Jack Daniels Series being introduced. The new series were listed ahead of the Wolfgangs, which seemed to have been a hint that the EVH endorsement was about to expire or that it already happened. The HP series was first listed with the US-made Frontline model and several imported versions. The American versions were finely crafted instruments that were developed by Tony Pascoe, Tim Lickfield, and Ed Pope, with input from Mike Powers, and were designed to compete with the high-end handcrafted boutique guitars. Pascoe details, "My game plan was to go with what people liked about Peavey, and go with the company's strengths, which was manufacturing in the U.S. Right. We had infrastructure already in place, all we needed were products. Ed Pope says, I was told to make it the best it can be and put everything into it. We also made some improvements. There were some players that didn't like the block trem that the Wolfgang had and wanted a floating trem. We had coil tapping. We used the same neck shape as the Wolfgang and a different peg head. The HP Signature had a one-piece set-in mahogany neck, an ebony fretboard and 24 frets, and light maple binding with a one-piece mahogany body and a carved maple top. A year later, the HP Signature Series offered a select all-mahogany variant at a much lower price point, which is pretty much what I have here. Jim Bogues remembers the switch from Wolfgang's to HP models as an exciting time. Hartley seemed energized about shaking things up and making some changes. One was the balance of the guitar. Hartley was in his element. He's a tinkerer at heart, and this was a new toy to tweak. We had a fresh marketing team that was ready to make a big splash with the guitars too. It was a fun time. We invested a lot of marketing resources into the HP series launch. We had a lot of positive feedback from media as well. Guitar World gave it their Platinum Award, for example. There's no question that the HP series was developed to become our new flagship instrument. Since the Wolfgang wasn't going to be continued, Hartley decided he was going to make the kind of high-end guitar he'd always wanted to make. Did you know that the sign in front of the Gulf Coast Hard Rock Hotel and Casino is actually based on the shape of this here HP Signature guitar? Kind of appropriate for Mississippi. And I'm not sure if the guitar is still up there. I know that in Katrina the hotel was damaged and the casino was damaged, but it said the sign was not damaged because it was edge on into the wind, not facing the wind, so it was able to stand. Let's get in here and deox my pots. Still in pretty decent shape on the back here. I've even still got my plastic wrap over my back plate. I never peeled it. Cleaning my pots, I'm going to use a little deoxit. Try to get them, get it sprayed right underneath this area here. It's a good way to get in there. And then I'm just going to work the knobs back and forth as quick as I can. Get that stuff to go all through those contacts. A good wipe on them. Go in there. The gold hardware on this has always been weird too. I don't think it was 2 months old before the plating here on the pickup started disappearing. They almost look silver now. Also the top of these back posts, those look pretty bad too. The tuners still look good. You know, all these parts still look good, but that stuff wore off fast. I was just going to put the back plate on, but I wanted to show you where they put the shielding tape. There's like, you know, a lot of wrinkles in it. And I don't think there's any way to really do that without getting wrinkles. If you know a way, let me know. But I always get wrinkles on mine and people complain about it. Nothing I can do. The factory does it too. I'm going to put some 10s on it. That's what it's always had. So I'm going to put back on it. So, you know, I always wondered why Peavey never went the retro nostalgia route. They always seem to be heading forward, never looking back, which I guess is a good philosophy for a company. But they never really got into doing reissues of their guitars or anything like that. You know, you look at a Les Paul or a Strat, it's been the same design for 75 years, basically. You know, you can still get one, probably, that's pretty close to how they made them back then. The sound you want, you know, you can get them with the P90s or whatever. But, you know, and even there's other guitar companies that, you know, jumped on the retro bandwagon. You know, you can still get Dan Electros, you can still get, you know, Charvels. That's kind of cool. But, you know, I had never understood why Peavey never went back and tried to, like, do some reissues on the T Series or the Mantis or the Hydra or the Vortex. You know, they just went with these clown guitars. They tried to make some of their amps look old, but I don't know, they never really jumped on that bandwagon when people were having nostalgia to go back and reissue some of the guitars. You know, it's you know, I think it'd be a pretty cheap option too, because if you look at a T Series, those first four guitars, you know, the T40, the T60, the T15, I think the T27 too, they're all pretty easy to replicate, especially with today's, you know, factory work. You can probably turn them out pretty good and make a good profit instead of making stupid clown guitars. What do I know? I'm in a basement fixing these things up. So I can see it's been a while since I did this. I didn't put any pencil in my nut. It's just a little lubricant. Cool looking headstock too, isn't it? I'm sighting down the neck. There's a little underbow. I don't think I've ever done a truss rod adjustment on this. So, 19 years old, I think it's probably due for a little tweak. Thinking maybe 3/4 of a turn tighter. Flatten out the board a little bit, but still give me a little relief. I don't want it completely flat, and I don't want it overbowed, of course. Yeah, I don't think I've ever been in there. That's pretty loose, actually. Sure, over time, temperature changes and that kind of stuff. Let's loosen it. Ah, I see. There's loose. It was tightening up the other way, I think. Alright, now it's coming back tight again. On this end, it was completely the opposite way. Alright. It's starting to feel a little bit of pressure. Oh, there she goes. I'm going to give it one more 1/8 turn. Let's see what that looks like. I'm probably going to have to raise my bridge. I don't know, that might be too flat. Let's go back 1/8. Nice, I like the way that feels. Well, there's something about playing a guitar that you loved and you hadn't played in years that can like bring you right back. You know, it's almost like putting on an old leather coat. It's just like built in for you, you know.
Is this Peavey that stands before me?
All right. So yeah, this is a sweet ass guitar. I'm still in love with it. I wish I had a musical room here of my own that I can set it up and go play. I really don't have that space yet. I'm working on it. Going to be putting up some walls down here in the shop soon. But I'm going to get this thing back to the jam room. And I'm going to put it out and see if anybody wants to pluck away on it. Hopefully they won't poo-poo it because it's a Peavey. But I think if somebody played this, they would really fall in love with it. You know, if you're a Schecter guy, a Paul Reed Smith guy, if you're a Les Paul guy, go look for one of these. If you see one of these at the music shop, don't go buy it because it's a Peavey. Go play it. You'll see what I mean. I mean, the construction, you know, set neck, binding. It's everything you'd want in a Les Paul. If you're a Wolfgang guy, go try one of these out. You know, if you're a Wolfgang guy that isn't into the trem, go check it out. That's all I'm saying. Don't discount it because it's a Peavey. Even though I know they make shit products now. Although, the Trace Elliott bass amp that we have, I hear, is made by Peavey. So, I guess their amps are still good. Entry level. Still entry level, I would say. You know, if you're a pro, you're probably moving on to something more like a Friedman or a high-end Fender or something for an amp. But seriously, check these out. If you are into Peavey guitars, I cannot recommend this book enough. Again, Peavey Guitars, The Authorized American History by Willie G. Mosley. What's kind of cool is it's got two T15s here. You got Chip Todd with his, I'm sorry, T60s. You got one T60 here, one there. And it's also got two signature models here. And of course the Mantis, which was based on Hartley Peavey's, I think maybe high school design. He had done this sketch of how he wanted the guitar to look, and he got it kind of close, you know. That's kind of cool. So this is a great book for anybody wanting to learn more about Peavey guitars and the history of Peavey. It is chocked full of everything you want to know. So, probably find that on Amazon. But, anyway, I want to thank you for joining me. Give me a thumbs up for filming it for you. We'll talk again soon.